Hey everybody, it is Hannah here with another week recap and look forward to the following week with regards to the League of Super Shit Posters Pokemon Draft League. I am joined once again by my co-host Emblem, who obviously was out last video.
Hello there, everyone.
If you will notice, Emblem has a swag new mic, so
Yes.
that is definitely a good thing. Hopefully you will be able to hear him this time. And we have a special guest again this week. Joining us special from the Moonlight Magearnas, we have Princess here to give her takes on the week that was.
2 weeks ago. Yeah.
The week that was 2 weeks
Hi.
ago. That is a very fair point, because we are coming off the off week. Held off on making the video because there were a few battles that were actually relevant to this week that had to happen during the off week. So,
Sorry about that.
not gonna name names or point fingers. Not going to comment on the fact that the person we were waiting for is in this video.
You don't need
No,
to.
it
I
wasn't me.
already
It
did.
was my teammate, okay?
Anyway,
Actually, it was more of me. It was more of me.
anyway. So, quick recap on standings. So, Swell Thunder are currently the absolute rulers of the league. They have won as many battles as a lot of other teams, but they are so far ahead on differential. It's honestly kind of unfair at this point. Um, Trash Pandas and Dimsdale Dittos, though, are hounding them in their own conference. Like, 4 wins, 2 losses, three-way tie. Differential is all that is separating the playoff race right now. Um,
And we are a little bit under halfway through the season, so there's
yes.
still plenty of time for anyone to make a comeback.
Yeah, there's still plenty of time for Moonlight Magearnas to, you know, find their footing. Like, they are only 2 battles behind. If they beat Swell Thunders or Dimsdale Dittos heads up, that closes the entire gap. Like, they can very easily play themselves back into a reasonable playoff spot with just 1 week. Over in
Mhm.
Conference 2, Waifu Materials are having their absolute run of the show. Like, Conference 2 is their conference to lose right now when they've got a 2 game lead over everybody and a 12 differential lead over the next closest team. Like, it is super, super far apart for, like, that conference between 1 and 2. And the Beedrill, the Ludicolo, and the Electrikes are all looking to make up ground. So, yeah, quick move over to the week that was. Um, Dittos and Waifu Material was a 1-1 split. Net 1 differential to Waifu Material, though. The Swell Thunder just shellacked E-City. B-Drills versus Twash Pandas. Another split. Waffle standing in for Hatsworth's partner, though kind of carried the day with the big. Oh, I have these differentials backwards. It was 0-2 and 4-0, not. Don't know why I did that way. Anyway, yeah, Waffles putting in a stud performance to net a big, like, differential help for Hatsworth's cause. And then Lilikov Ludicolo picked up two honestly super needed wins to launch themselves back into at least a chase for a playoff spot. So why don't we launch into first matchup of the week, which was Waifu Material versus Dimsdale Dittos, and in particular, um, Ooze versus Waffles. What was y'all's sort of takeaway from this?
It was a pretty intense battle, but honestly, I might just be nitpicking here, but Heatwave really wasn't a good idea for Waffles Golbat.
Yeah, the Heatwave Golbat. Yeah, that didn't get too much across, in the way of it didn't hit too much for its lone big offensive. Well, actually, Golbat had a pretty solid suite of moves. It was just I feel like this week was sort of where we really got our first look at waifu materials sort of big, I don't want to say weakness per se, but their particular tell, where Waffles tends to put waifu material tends to invest a really big amount of their firepower into Kira's team, and then Waffles tends to play around with the scraps. And so, this was just another week where you look at Waffles, he's packing things like Golbat and Pyroar so that Kira can pack a lot of bigger threats. And I will say, near the end, it almost looked like potentially Crocodile could have run it back, but Landorus was just too fast, and I think that um, really between sort of getting very little done out of Regigigas and very little out of Golbat early in the fight, like I think that was sort of the big struggle point for Waffles. Emblem, do you have anything that you would like to add about that?
One thing I noticed with this battle is there seemed to be a lot of key stuff with status that definitely really changed the way that the match went. Because, both sides, the Stoutland and Tyranitar getting burned, both hindered them a whole lot and ended up making them go down in situations where they otherwise would have taken out at least one Mon. And then also the paralysis against the made it so it couldn't really be preserved for later and used to help against some of the other Mons on the team. So
That is really
we're
fair.
definitely pretty big.
The burn and the para did matter a lot. Obviously, they were all imposed in, like, none of them came out of like RNG hacks. It was, WoW burns and Thunderwave paralysis. But it's one of those, like, smart status play did really, like, mean a lot in this battle. Um, Honestly, I'm kind of curious what the Regigigas had beyond Avalanche. Um, if it had some, like, tricks up its sleeve to sort of stall out its own slow start, or if it was just meant to come in and be a consistent attacker in spite of the slow start debuff. I think that's something to, like, one of the curious what ifs for, like, week or like for the week. Um, then Kira versus Zexion. If like if Waffles was the show of like where waifu materials strategy sort of falls down, Kira was very much a like show of where putting all your eggs in one basket shines. Because like this was just a battle where at a lot of points Kira just had to sit there and click to just swing in. And like it was definitely a battle where, just to use a Magic the Gathering sort of metaphor, it was very much a battle where turn all your cardboard sideways and good things will happen was definitely enough. I also think that like Fire Punch Law Bunny is probably the spicy tech of the week. Like, particularly bringing Fire Punch Law Bunny into a rain team. That's one of those,
Yeah.
like, it only might matter in one situation, but the situation where it matters, it is the absolute backbreaker. Like, just because like there were so many things that just couldn't really be answered effectively once that scissor was gone. So
One thing that I found interesting with that prep there as well was bringing the Ninetales Lola without snow warning. And I actually do believe that was intentional simply because there were a lot of Mons left on the Dittos team that could make use of hail. I think it makes sense that Kira would have wanted to avoid possibly setting up their hail for them and having them take advantage of that. And the Dittos didn't end up bringing any of their hail Mons, but still, I think that's a pretty good piece of prep from the just being ready for that and thinking to like not run the standard ability on something because it could possibly help your opponent's team a lot more than it would help
yeah,
yours.
that was definitely like a brilliant piece of like teching.
Plus the fact that freeze dry hits a lot of rain teams really really hard.
Yeah, that
So
freeze dry just like brutalized the like brutalized X's team so hard. Um Obviously a lot of talk from sort of the bu- 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 talking about it from the waifu material side. Anything stand out to you, sort of in the opposite direction, looking at like the games from the perspective of Dimsdale Dittos?
I do feel like the Dittos have sort of started to fall into a pattern. That pattern being they bring sand and sun, specifically Megazard's sun, on one team, and then rain on the other. And team, the sheer amount of possibilities that they can do with having all four different types of weather, I feel like that's something they would do well to take advantage of a little bit more, mix things up a bit. Because like when you start to build a tell like this, the best thing you can do is just completely upset it.
Yeah, that's they definitely another tell that like I have started to see emerge is the Parish Trap Polytoad. Um and so I wonder
Yeah.
sort of how often they keep bringing that out versus like potentially starting to use that as a misdirect and baiting teams into potentially having like Shud Shell answer. Um, I think like honestly, we probably should expect to keep seeing it until like until such time though as like we actually see somebody like prove that it's not something that's going to work. And I think,
Another thing
oh, go ahead.
I kind of noticed that with the weather stuff, it more feels like it's just there than anything, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does kind
Yeah,
of feel like they aren't abusing their weathers to the full potential that they possibly could.
entirely fair. I don't think that we've seen sort of the just Polytoad makes 8 turns of rain. Um, Swampert comes in. Swampert just has nothing but coverage swings, and Swampert just punches and punches and punches. Um, that I think is another sort of um, circumstance, though, of like there haven't really been games where they have had opportunities to just like let Swampert do Swampert things. So I think probably sometime soon we will just get that like Swampert goes off game. Um, so I think that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. Um, Anything else before we move on to the next matchup?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Um, so next up we have got E City versus Swell Thunder. Uh, I have Emily versus Wes queued up first on my screen. So why don't we start there? Um, what was your big takeaway from this battle?
Never ignore your opponent's abilities, no matter how stupid that they may seem.
Yeah, no matter how dumb, no matter how gimmicky, like combination of words I never thought I would be saying, but I'm saying after watching this battle. Virgin Dragonite, Chad Oricorio. Like, just
Yeah, because
Yeah,
like
Oricorio
trying to give yourself the
can.
speed boost, just like in that situation, just doesn't quite work out.
yeah, like this battle was very much like fairly over like on turn 10, and the only reason that it went as long as it did and it got as close as it did was just Vaporeon put in so much work between the between Scald Burning, Tapu Bulu, like Protect Wish stalling for quite a while in the face of like Superior and Lycanroc. Like this could have been much faster and much uglier in Emily's favor if Vaporeon did not like just full hero mode.
So credit to that Vaporeon for helping in taking down two different grass types. It's pretty cool to see. But as soon like once the Oricorio was done, I don't think it was even as much the fact that Oricorio went and took down three Pokemon, but that the Pokemon it took down were the big threats on Wes's team, the Mega Gardevoir and the Dragonite. Because
Yeah, after losing
yeah,
those two, it was just over.
Yeah. Like
because from there, Lycanroc doesn't get beat by Ambipom or Ninetales, and then when Vaporeon comes in, you just go out to one of the two grass types, which is basically how we saw it play out. If Vaporeon's in, you go to one of the grass types, and if it when it wasn't in, you sent in Lycanroc, took a couple of hits, and just killed things.
yeah, it's one of those like Ambipom was Ambipom is not the kind of Pokemon that comes in and like takes battles over. Ambipom, I like to think of it as an assassin Pokemon. You trade your Ambipom up for a more valuable Pokemon on the opponent's team, and if you trade Ambipom for one Pokemon, as long as it's the Pokemon you want, Ambipom has done well. Um, moving on to Sky versus Optimistic. This was just like eventually Landorus was going to Landorus this fight. Like just starting from team select screen, Sky had something of an advantage because like they just had to make sure that like at no point was a high health Lapras looking across the screen at a Landorus, and with the fact that like that never happened, it was definitely very like that was exactly the win con that Sky had to go for, and Landorus just got to do Landorus things.
Yeah, like I agree. As soon as you see the team select, like there's four Mons that are weak to ground type moves, and then two that get hit neutrally by it. And while they have a decent amount of bulk, don't have the hugest amount of bulk. So as we saw happen in the battle, Lapras got chipped, and then it switched in on Landorus, two hits, gone. Scissor got chipped, switched it in on Landorus, two hits, gone. And then nothing else took even a single hit from Lando.
Yeah. I will say the thing that was the absolute hypest for me though was last week. Wes and I talked about the potential of a Muck Ditto when when like in this matchup between Swell Thunder and Electrikes, and it just makes me very happy that we got to see that. Like, they didn't stay on the board together for long, but we did get to see, like, um, what's what I'm looking for? We did get to see, like, Muck versus Muck, and we're actually, I think, currently 2 for 2 on Swell Thunder having the opportunity for, like, variants to face off between Alolan Muck versus Kanto Muck, and then week 1 we had Landorus Incarnate versus Landorus Therian. It's going to be interesting to see if we can make it 3 for 3 this week with Lycanroc versus Lycanroc. That's just
Yeah.
just a little like something to think about. Um, anything y'all would like to sort of add on this before we move on?
Yeah, just one specific thing I'm going to point out that I feel like could have been played a bit better on turn 14 of the battle. And was it 22%? Lando had switched in and intimidated it, and Optimistic switched the Darm out. The reason I think that was the wrong play is with Stealth Rocks up, Darm wasn't going to be able to come back in. Chance that Excadrill is going to be able to come in later and spin the rocks away, but even when Excadrill came in later, it didn't even end up trying to spin.
Yeah, I
I feel like it would have been better to flare blitz with the Darm, get a little bit of damage, let it go down, and then send in Lapras or Scizor safely, so that way they don't need to be worried about getting damaged on the switch in.
that's entirely fair. Also, if you blitz,
Um,
like at that point, you're sort of playing with house money and just praying RNG Jesus loves you enough to give you the burn.
Because if you manage to get that 10% burn chance on Lando, then suddenly the game goes a lot more heavily in your favor. So that one specific thing I feel like was Optimistic's one chance to deal with the Lando, and could have been a little bit
I
better. Overall, though, good play.
maybe Excadrill just didn't have rapid spin.
That is also a
That is
possibility, in which case the Darm staying in would have been
Some better
just
prep
even more better.
yeah.
would some yeah, some better prep would definitely be a good idea.
Yeah. So either having kept the Darm in or having later on rapid spin with Excadrill just to make sure that Darm could actually come in and do something.
This is true because, like, I think shortly after. Ba-dum-ba-dum. Yeah,
Um,
4 turns later was you had this screen where it was Excadrill versus Muck. Muck was very unlikely to have anything that was a like offensive threat into Excadrill, and so I definitely think that if Optimistic had been packed, that probably would have been the turn to go for it. But obviously, all of this is like us pontificating after the fact. Like, there's um, there could be a million reasons like why he made the move that he did. Um, but just that is, it would be interesting if nothing else to sort of get his like why he why he switched out on 14, and then if he did have spin, why he didn't go for it on 18. Anything else you would like to add before we move on to next series?
Yeah, I just want to say that pursuit was just really, really
Oh yeah,
satisfying.
that the Muck pursuit into Gengar on turn 17, that was just like chef's kiss, good night sweet prince. Like that was just such a like the battle was really like rough up to that point, but that was the exact moment where you could just see Optimistic's spirit leave his body and just be like, I want to be somewhere else battling some other trainer. So that was just like, speaking of, I want to be somewhere else battling some other trainer. I think that's a very natural segue to talk about Denny's battle against Waffles with Hatsworth's team. Because there was very much a moment early in the battle where it was just like Denny seemed like he was just out of it. And that's turn 4. Typhlosion goes down to Metagross's Bullet Punch, and Denny just seemed to spend the rest of the battle playing like he was not sure what he needed to be doing at that point. Like, just there was a lot of like, he never really seemed to get his footing back. Like,
Definitely in agreement on that. Just from the very beginning, things started going downhill. Like down that early, definitely not a good thing for Denny. And then just really just Pangoro coming in and not a lot of things wanting to come in on it.
yeah, like,
There wasn't much coming back from that.
and I also think probably a fair bit of it too was Denny and I prepped a lot around like playing around Beedrill because we expected Beedrill to be the mega that ended up coming out. Since I think prior to that matchup, Hats was 2 for 2 on bringing Beedrill in one of the two battles. I think Hats himself brought it, I think, in week 1, and I know he had it on his stand-in team against Optimistic in week 2. Um, and so just we were very much expecting to see when we saw that Hats didn't have Beedrill, we expected to see Camerupt on the bench and Beedrill in the action. And I think had it been Beedrill over Camerupt, that would have probably radically shifted the dynamic of the battle because Metacham could have like leached through a lot more. But obviously that's a lot of sort of rampant speculation about things that obviously didn't happen. So just something like kind of a why a lot of things played out the way they did.
Yeah,
So
props to Hatsworth for bringing the Mega Camerupt over the Mega Beedrill, and also running Yawn in a competitive battle on a Mon that's hardly ever brought. Like that is just in general great, and that really did make a big difference there as well. Because like if the Mew had been in there with a nasty plot, Camrupt wouldn't have killed it, and from there, basically everything. So
Yeah. Like,
nice little tech coming through there on a mod that itself was sort of a
you have kind of habanero tech bringing Mega Camerupt. Carolina Reaper tech bringing Yawn on Mega Camerupt. Like, that is a whole new ballpark of spicy. Um,
indeed.
what about the other battle of this matchup? Me taking on Hatsworth. Princess, you had some interesting takes on this.
Hold on, let me grab him. Uh, yeah, that was a thick pumpkin you brought.
Such a fat pumpkin. Such a fat pumpkin. This
Yeah, just that solid 10 turns of not really doing anything.
and the fact that there were
I mean,
the fact that there were multiple stretches of just nothing happens. Hats attacks, my grass type heals. Hats attacks, my grass type heals.
Hatsworth did bring a really good trick room team.
Yeah. Just the thing that I
Venusaur and
feel
Gourgeist were just too
feel
much.
like honestly the thing that hurt him the most, like I feel like through the game it was basically already decided because if you look at the mons that went down in the battle, like he brought two Trick Room setters in Bronzong and Cofagrigus. First mon to go down is Bronzong, and then after that, Cofagrigus is there at 10% health, and there are rocks up, so that mon is also effectively dead. So then you're stuck with four mons that are made for a Trick Room team, and no mons to put up Trick Room.
Entirely fair. I also think that like this game basically was completely over. I think it was like 15 turns before the end. Um it was I think turn 45 was the point where yeah, turn 45 the Z move Tyrantrum just puts Clefable underground, and there is nothing to stop. Um, as I have heard this set described previously, wow, rot, die, etc. Will-O-Wisp, Leech Seed, just the dots slowly just chipping away at um, all of Hatsworth's Pokemon and just dying slow, very unsatisfying deaths. Like, one of the points that it very much felt like nothing was happening was the last several turns of the battle. And it was just like, nothing was happening, but at the same time, everything happened. And so,
Because like in those final few turns, like Gorgeist took down three mons, and I believe it took down all of them with Leech Seed.
the only one to. It actually took down Cofagrigus with Phantom Force, which was actually potentially relevant near the very end of the battle, because since it took down Cofagrigus with a contact move in Phantom Force, that meant that it gave up Frisk and got Mummy. That Mummy then transferred onto Conkeldurr in the late, or like in the very, very end, which meant that Ice Punch lost out on actually quite a bit of potency. So,
I feel like a situation in which that could have been even bigger was if the Conkeldurr had happened to be Guts. That would have been a massively good thing, just having Mummy switched over to it.
yeah, if it had been Guts Conkeldurr, that
If
would
that
have been.
Conkeldurr was Guts, it would have been just gone.
Yeah, that was like. It was definitely not the most fun game this week to watch. Um,
Oh no, it was beautiful.
I do
I,
enjoy just seeing a thing sit there and never die, just gradually pick the opponent apart.
I love Gorkai so much.
Hatsworth did play really good
Yeah,
for what was happening.
Hats did play like pretty well around all that. Like it was definitely a interesting battle, and like I said, it all really was building to, and then a denouement like down from like that critical turn where Clefable just exploded. Um, anything else to add regarding my battle with Hatsworth?
Further comment from me.
Okay.
Hatsworth could probably use something other than Trick Room to rely on. I mean, he does have a lot, but
Yeah.
more would be nice.
Yeah. I'm actually planning a second video this week. That is basically just kind of a what teams need to do to make the playoffs, and like definitely for Hats, he does have the advantage of getting extra free agent moves when his new permanent partner finally comes in. And I think that that's going to be something that is critical for Babylonian Beedrill to make a big playoff push. So,
Well, this is a great place to announce that extra video.
yep.
Yeah.
Surprise and
Perfect plug.
perfect plug like halfway the into this video. So anything else y'all would like to add before we move on to last matchup of the week? Which actually was the two of you. So I'm just going to say that I have Lily's battle with Princess queued up, and I'm just going to let it play, and I will let the two of you sort of give your own different perspectives on this matchup and sit back and not say much.
All right then.
I mean, looking at this, just the first thing that stands out to me, and this is how the battle ended up playing out. Nihilego just kills a lot of things because, like, the Regice is a decent special wall, but it's weak to Power Gem, so it's gone. Volcarona doesn't stand too much of a chance. The things that can really eat a hit are possibly a Dittoed Nihilego, and then and maybe the Celestia. And then, as we see in the battle, Celestia ends up going down before Nihilego hits the field. There is a whole lot of bad luck in a single move. Like, first off, it manages to hit, which is already like there's a 30% chance of that missing. It's the paralysis, which is it a 10% chance, I believe, for paralysis? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 10% odds.
The Yeah, and then the full para from there, which I forget if that's a 33% or a 50% chance.
I think it's 33 on full para.
So in that case,
Yeah,
quick
this was really a battle of luck.
So there was, I believe, roughly a 2% chance of things happening in that exact way with the Jellicent, both not missing the Thunder, getting the para, and then getting the full para. There was that didn't happen, and if it didn't happen, Nihilego would have taken more damage and could have quite possibly gone down against one of the against its own life orb recoil. So
I hate math.
then, of course, there was the misfortune of Ditto losing the speed tie against Nihilego, and also, I just realized, getting crit by the attack as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
I want to say the thing that went in my favor the most was the Quick Claw on Celesteela.
Yeah, I think you
uh,
got something like three straight turns where you got the quick claw when you wanted it and not when you didn't.
Yeah.
Because, like, obviously, when you're using a first turn invulnerable move like
yeah,
Fly, you always want the quick claw to go off the turn that you do the startup and to fail to trigger on the turn when you come down. And like Celesteela was able to just avoid so much damage off of lucky quick claws.
yeah,
Unfortunately, that wasn't enough.
Yeah. Um and what about the other matchup with Roxa taking on you, Emblem?
yeah. This match was definitely, for me at least, a lot of fun to play, just because, like, from the very beginning, it there was like no one mon that could take down all of the stuff on the opponent's team. There was a number of potential answers to everything that each of us had for each other. And so, yeah, it was tough to get all of the plays correct. And there was a couple of points where I really had to predict Roxa successfully, and if I hadn't, it could have gone like just entirely the opposite way. Like, for example, when Manectric was in against the Bastiodon 13 through 15, like, first off, predicting on the turn 13 that it would go for a stealth rock instead of an attacking move, and then predicting turn 15 that there would be the switch back into Palisand, and so to not go for Thunderbolt and to instead go for Overheat. If I had not made either of those, if I had not made those predictions, then it wrong, then Manetric would have basically been dead, and Manetric was like crucial as a sack at the very end of the game. So that just like goes to show how close of a game this ended up being.
Yeah, Overheat was really good for you.
Yeah. And also, just in general, props to that Palisand set. Palisand, I know a lot of people hate the Sandcastle, but I really just love the thing. The thing is great. It is very bulky, and Roxa put a lot of good use into it there. Like, it just goes to show that my only real thing that I could do against Palisand, send in chests not to not die. Because like Hydreigon could potentially take a hit, but by the time that it by the time that it got to Palisand doing things, Hydreigon was so low that a Giga Drain or two could potentially take it out, and then Palisand had already set up one or two stockpiles, making it so it wouldn't really die to Hydreigon. A good Palisand set. Definitely tough to win.
Yeah, during our prep, I was honestly kind of confused by the stockpile, but I'm glad to see that it did help.
Can I just take a moment though to say that if we hadn't just come from a matchup where Yawn Camerupt was the deciding factor, like that Palosand set would have easily been like the spicy thing of the week. Like that
There
was
was a lot of good prep by Roxette. Like I felt like the entire game I had to be predicting like at least every third turn or otherwise I would lose. Very, very good prep and very good play on Rox's part.
so. Anything else to add, either regarding Roxa against Emblem or just regarding the current state of the league before we move on to looking at week 4?
I'm just really proud of everyone for just throwing in all this sick battling, I guess. Yes, I can words.
There have been a lot of really great battles, and it's just been a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to look over and analyze. So, just very nice job to everybody. And I mean, everyone still does have a very real chance at playoffs. Like, win loss perspective, all the teams are like 1 week apart from each other. So,
This is true. Like,
this could very easily change very fast. I feel like this next week is going to be like the first week that we'll be able to sort of tell, okay, this team has a really high chance of making it to playoffs. This team doesn't have a high chance of making it to playoffs because right now everyone's got a pretty darn good chance.
yeah, like there are lots of log jams, lots of opportunities for teams to really shape their destiny. And so I think that that is going to be something like to really look forward to. So going ahead and jumping actually like into next week's prep. So first matchup for week 4 is obviously we've got the Demsdale Dittos taking on the Moonlight Magearnas. So, Emblem, what is your take on this? Since obviously we're going to honor the tradition of nobody talks much
Me
about
shutting the hell up.
of nobody talks much about their about their next week's games. So, Emblem, what are your sort of hot takes regarding this?
All right, there's definitely a lot of Mons on the Magearna's team that can put in a lot of work. First off, I think it'll be interesting to see if Sun even comes at all because the Magearna, like the thing that the Magearna, the thing that stands out about their team is just the huge number of really strong, really scary fire types that they have. So if Sun ends up getting set up, just come in and just burn literally everything, and they have like at least 4 different options for how to do that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if we even see Sun. A lot of good mods to take on the various other weathers, like Shaman. Shaman works really well against like the sand with both to be able to take hits decently well from that, as well as the Tyranitar, and then just dealing a ton of damage back to them as well. And then also other things like Jellicent, that'll be able to sponge up rain hits. Palisand, that thing heals 75% with Shore Up if it's in the sand. A lot of things on the Magearna's team that become significantly scarier inside of the various weathers.
That is definitely very true, and like I fully have every expectation that we will probably not see Charizard this week. Like if if the Dittos bring out Charizard Y and like manage to win with it, that is probably like one of the biggest flexes in the history of this league. But I really,
It's just highly
yeah,
unlikely that that'll happen. Because, like, if it does ever come in, like, you've got things like a Victini in the sun. Everything will die.
yeah,
Everything will die.
yeah, like I, just going off of sort of what it feels like I would expect, V Create Victini in Sun feels like the type of thing that resistance doesn't matter. That would probably still one hit KO everything that doesn't weather set against it. Like, I'm pretty sure Sun boosted V Create probably kills Swampert and Dragalge. Like,
Yeah.
that's.
Just pulled up the calcs, actually. Like, a banded V Create in the sun from a Victini against a Dragalge with max HP but no defense has a 93% chance to OHKO. Against a bulky mon that resists fire.
Yeah, and it's one of those with rocks that's, I'm sure, a guaranteed OHKO. So, like,
Absolutely.
that's one of
Yeah, and
those.
then like other things, like if you send in Politoed to set up rain, there's like a Bolt Strike coming your way. And if you want to switch into Swampert to avoid the Bolt Strike, it's got stuff like Grass Knot, and then Swampert will be dead.
Yeah,
Just Victini, if there is sun, will kill, I'd bet, at least two things before switching out.
yeah. Like, which is why it's one of those, like, I don't expect to see Charizard. That's one of those.
So it'll be interesting to see just how they play without the Charizard there. Because I'd say if Charizard isn't coming, I'd say we could also safely assume that Torkoal isn't going to come as
Yeah,
well. And then probably not Victory Bell, their other Sun Setter. So that means they're going to have to be a little bit more of their lower tier and more unique stuff. Like Ludicolo might finally come
yeah.
out. May see Hail again. It'll be interesting to
I
see.
was just about to say, and like, with this much, like, to go back to the pun that kept coming up in the first video, with that much firepower, that does also
I hate all of you.
like that
Uh,
that scares off Hale so much as well. Like, I feel
yeah.
like this week it's less going to be a question of what Pokemon do the Dimsdale Ditto bring, and it's much more a question of what configurations do they bring, and how do they play around bringing certain things that just have no choice but to come.
Because, like, with the sheer amount of fire type attacks that are going to be coming their way, like, all the sun stuff you probably don't want to bring, and then the hail stuff, both of those mons get destroyed. So that means that's 5 of the 6 mons that you're leaving behind.
Yeah, and so then you're looking at, like, do you not bring cast form or do you not bring scissor? Because like that's just 5 Pokemon that are just dead.
And like the fact that that is a sincere question, like bring Scizor or bring cast form, that just shows how much the Dittos are forced to change their place, forced to change their play style, forced to change what they bring, just based off of the absurd threats that the Magearna have.
The one thing that I will say is a saving grace for the Dittos is while obviously they are going to have a hard time against the fire of the Magearna, like Volcarona and Moltres are going to have very bad days if they get stuck in the sun or in the sand, since like
Yeah.
both of them take 4x from rock type moves and against the sand configuration of the Dimsdale Dittos, like that could be a very like that could be the one place of pressure that they really muscle back against sort of the big impending threats. So,
Feel like one thing that's definitely going to determine how this game goes is sort of like which Mons on the Magearnas team end up against which weather. Because like if Palisade ends up going up against a sand team, that thing is going to just eat all of the attacks and then heal back 75% of its health without even caring. If it gets matched up against the rain team, then half of the stuff there is just going to utterly obliterate it.
yeah,
So it'll be interesting to see.
water compaction doesn't do a whole lot in the face of things like hydro pumps.
Like you, there is the possibility of bringing some heat. Like if you want to just to take on the Mega Swampert, have like water compaction. That would be like, but that would take a lot of just specifically playing carefully to make sure that you don't take too much damage before going against the Swampert. And then plus there's also still going to be the threats of like Politoed and Ludicolo to deal with. So
Yeah. So, that's just that's going to be something that's real spicy. Just so much fire versus like basically just the team building tax that the Magearnas put onto the Dittos and how the two teams sort of play around that like the sort of head games of lining up matchups. Um,
this is definitely going to be something that'll be very interesting to watch.
Princess, do you have any vague thoughts regarding going into the Dimsdale Dittos before we move on?
Um, I plan on having some fun this week.
All right.
Entirely fair.
Is that suitably vague and threatening?
That is
Yes.
both vague and threatening. So,
Good.
moving on to the Lily Cove Ludicolos taking on the Babylonian Bee Drills. Um, Princess, what are your thoughts?
Let me see. I don't have the thing open, so I have to. Let's see. Ludicolo versus speed drills. Oh, yikes! This is a lot. They're both like really decent teams, and Hatsworth does kind of have an advantage in not having a teammate because, like, he has a better job prepping stuff, I guess.
It can be a lot easier to prep when you're doing both sides of it yourself. It's a bit easier to just balance things out that way.
Yeah, not necessarily having to communicate, but obviously on the opposite side, he does also have the struggle of the saying is two heads are better than one, and that saying is a thing for a reason. So,
Yeah.
like,
Um, Trick Room is definitely going to be a good thing here, especially with the amount of speed on the Ludicolo's side of things.
yeah, definitely, like, I think that, how Lily and Emblem prep around the Trick Room that is very obviously painted out is going to be something that is very, interesting to watch. Something that I think actually matters a lot here that I don't feel like has mattered for Hatz's previous battles is who does Hatsworth actually choose to play against versus who does he sort of shunt off onto a mod and be like, you go fight them. I don't want to deal with this. Because it's one of those, um, like, oh, did you say something, Emblem?
Nothing.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I heard something. Um, but yeah, this is also definitely going to be a match that is very determined by, like, quirky sets and, like, spicy tech builds. Because, like, Lily has consistently shown that, like, she is one of the most, like, creative battlers in the league, and at the same time, Hats has set himself up with a draft where he has no choice but to be spicy every week. Like, he cannot put out a milquetoast team even if he wants to. Because if he, just loads all his threats into one squad, then there's not. That literally puts him as running a zero threat team as his second squad, and that, like, is just something that's really untenable. So, like, I expect at least 3 or 4, like, really chin scratcher. Hmm. Right then. Sets out of this.
Electric feels like it's going to be a pretty big threat, but at the same time, I feel like it's something that Hatsworth knows how to work around.
Yeah, because Manectric is going to be really problematic for Hats right up until the point where Trick Room sets in. And once the Trick Room is locked down, like, Manectric goes from, like, world beater to, like, the most useless Pokemon. Because Manectric is a speed stat pretending that it has, like, other pros to it.
Fair enough.
So,
Magnetric has other pros. Magnetric's a good dog.
it is a good dog. But unfortunately, being a good dog really doesn't. No Pokemon has ever fainted just because a dog is good.
True.
So, I think that that's going to be something to watch for. Emblem, do you have anything that you would like to add before we move on, just in the vaguest of senses?
Not really. I'm still working out what I'm going to bring, although I've got a lot of ideas working around. Might see some things that haven't been seen in a while or at all. Who knows?
Who knows,
Nice and
indeed.
threatening.
So now it is time for us to move on to the Swell Thunder versus the Trash Pandas. Or Twash Pandas. I miss.
The Tomorrowland Trash Pandas.
God, we have the best name in this league. Don't at me. So, I will let the two of y'all say what you have to say about the two of us going head to head.
Yeah,
This is gonna be intense.
like just looking at the teams off of the bat, I would say that definitely the Swell Thunder have a lot more of just the immediate threats. Like their top four mons, Tapu Koko, Tapu Bulo, Mega Gallade, those all hit like trucks and they are very scary. And then on the other side, you've got a lot more of a defensive team. So interesting. Like this is really going to be the Trash Pandas things that can wall finding things that can wall all of the really huge threats that the Swell Thunder have. And then also being careful to not send too many walls into one battle and leaving none for the second battle. It's gonna be tough to prep for Coco, Bulu, Lando, and Gallade in one battle, and then still have mods left to deal with Coco, Lando, Bulu, and Gallade for the second battle because you don't know which ones are going to come to which fight. So it'll be tough to get
Yeah, and
the
you
right
don't know if
checks
we'll
into the
have,
right place.
and we don't know if we'll have a lower tier mon just show up and mess everything up. Which, knowing all of the coaches involved is a very real possibility.
One kind of random thing that I just noticed looking at this. There is ever a time that Shedinja might come, this might actually be it because there are a grand total of 3 mons on the team that can hit it with stab. And the kind of coverage that hits a Shedinja isn't as likely to be packed on a lot of these mons. So
True.
I may finally get a chance to shine. The other difficult thing I'd say for the Trash Pandas is like you definitely need to
Twash
bring.
Pandas. Gotta pronounce it right.
Yeah. Tough thing for the Trash Pandas is the things to wall out the 4 big threats. But there's also a lot of really bulky mons on the Swell Thunder as well. Like the Trash Pandas have a lot of sort of bulky and also hit hard. The Swell Thunder have their mega powered threats and then their tanks. And there is very little overlap between the two. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be the Swell Thunder definitely going to more define how this battle goes down. What it'll be more the Trash Pandas building based off the Swell Thunder than the Swell Thunder building based off the Trash Pandas.
Yeah, but they can't, like, forget to have some. I don't know what I was gonna say here.
You do always have to prepare at least a little bit for some of your opponent's walls, like for some of your opponent's threats. Like you have to have at least something that can take a hit from Integ. You have to have at least something that can take a hit from Mega Metacham. Luckily, stuff like Lando could come in and probably take some hits from those, and then some other mods like Duosion could fairly easily wall up Mega Metacham. Entei might be able to do something with Lantern or Slagoo or Tentacruel. So I feel like this it's definitely going to be more the Twash Pandas playing around the Swell Thunder. whether they can win this will depend on how effectively they can prepare and work around what the Swell Thunder bring.
I am only going to add two things. One is obviously this match has enormous playoff implications. Like this is probably the biggest playoffs matters like game that has been played yet this season. Because if either team takes a clean 2-0, that basically soft locks you for playoffs. Like,
Yeah.
No pressure.
yeah, no pressure, but like a 2-0 soft locks you into winning the harder conference with the fact that the Dimsdale Dittos and the Swell Thunder split 1-1 earlier. So I think that's definitely one thing to be aware of, and the other thing that I'm just going to say is goodest boy Ditto, we're going to figure it out, and we are going to match those doggos up. And Lycanroc Dusk is coming for Lycanroc Midnight. Be ready. So, those two things said. Moving on to the last matchup of the week, we have got the Waifu material versus the E-City Electrikes. What are y'all's sort of takes regarding this matchup?
First off, looking over the various teams, Megalopony is, as always, a massive threat that's going to be hurting a lot of things very, very hard. Things that can avoid being hurt by it.
I
A
will
lot of,
see.
yeah,
Go ahead.
is the fastest mon in this matchup. I will double check on that quickly. Provide your commentary while I'm checking that.
I kind of want to see the Waifu material bring Gardevoir, just because I know the Electrikes are also going to bring Gardevoir, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, there are a lot of like interesting, not necessarily from like a battling perspective per se, but from a like um like, oh, that's kind of neat perspective. You've got the potential for the Ninetales Ditto. You've got the potential for not Mega Gardevoir versus Mega Gardevoir, for Mega Gardevoir versus Gallade. Like a lot of really sort of interesting in that kind of way. As we discussed,
Ninetales is also probably going to be pretty threatening for the Electrikes. I mean, Alolan Ninetales
yeah,
is going to be pretty threatening to them.
Yeah, we maybe have the
Like, I
chance
know
for
we
the
joked
Ninetales to be
about.
Ninetales as well. There's a lot of possible pair-offs. Two Rotoms as well, huh?
I know we
Everything can
joked about
match.
the Chad Dragonite, but I mean, not the Chad
oh,
Dragonite.
Virgin
Oh my god.
Dragonite.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is going to happen if Ninetales is in the same match.
There are actually a lot of things that Dragonite doesn't really like. Like, Latias can come in. If multiscale is broken, it's dead. Kyurem, that's going to be killing it. Lopunny, that thing's going to have Ice Punch. It will kill. Just double checked on the Lopunny. It's actually fast enough that it can run Adamant and not even max speed EVs and still easily their fastest mons on the team.
On the other hand, Mega Gardevoir is also a huge threat to worry about.
Yeah,
Like the waifu material have Heatrant take on Mega Guard, and then that is really and and then there's Ferroseed as your two answers to a Mega Gardevoir. Like a Hidden Power Fire would take care of a Ferroseed, so you basically just have a Heatrant for it. It could come to one of two different matches, so it'll be like if Heatran and Gardevoir come to the same battle, then it'll probably be okay. But if Heatran comes to battle one and then Gardevoir comes to battle number two, getting a bit tough for the waifu.
yeah, it definitely that is a very valid point. And the other thing that I think is going to be interesting is just how with the sort of tell that we mentioned in the like battle recap earlier, um, just sort of seeing if week 4 is the week that waifu material sort of shakes up that pattern, as well as like do the do E City sort of like prep around expecting that to happen? Like, do they sort of load in a bunch of power mons to whomever faces Kira and sort of play a little more budget against Waffles, or do they take sort of the opposite tact and bet on being able to just outmuscle Waffles? That's that's something that sort of interests me to watch in all this. So, anything else y'all would like to add about um, waifu material and eCity, or about just week 4 in general?
This week is honestly terrifying because it's pretty obvious that this is the week to really play your hardest.
Yeah, this week has a lot of, particularly for Conference 1, this week is the week that, like, a lot of playoff stuff comes, like, to the center, or, like, to the forefront. Because, like, between, like, Swell Thunder, the Dittos, the Pandas, and the Magearnas, like, if the Dittos outright win, that probably is the end of the road for the Magearnas, like, even, like, pipe dreams of making playoffs. And if there is a clean winner between the Swell Thunder and the Pandas, then, like, that A topples the loser into a, like, fight for your life, you probably need 5 wins out of 6 games situation. And that puts the winner sitting in just an ascendant position, just end the 3 weeks so that I can take my playoff spot. Thank you very much. So,
This week's definitely going to be where we're going to really be able to see who's going to be getting to the playoffs and who isn't. This week's going to be shaping the rest of the season. This is where we will start to see it all end.
Yeah.
No pressure or
I
anything.
think I think that like there's a lot less at stake in the in conference 2. Like I don't think that even if they have a rough week, the sky will be falling for waifu materials. Um, I think that the Ludicolo versus the Babylonian Beedrill is a soft elimination game, just in that if it breaks 2-0 in either direction, the team that loses is probably sitting out in the cold once playoffs roll around. But it's one of those like a tie, like nobody walks away from Beedrill versus Ludicolo as a tie feeling bad. Nobody walks away from Waifu Material versus E City if that's a tie feeling bad. But like the two matchups that are playing out in Conference 1, everybody feels real bad about ties there because Conference 1 is really tight. And this is going to be the week that, like, creates a lot of separation. So, yeah, no pressure. No pressure on anybody. Um, that said, Princess, do you have anything that you would like to plug before you go?
Um, Besides the obvious plug for the other video you're making, which isn't really my thing, um, I'm really excited to see everyone's battles this week because of how intense they're going to be. So, good luck, everyone.
Emblem, anything you want to plug?
You know what? I'm just gonna plug the replays channel of the server. Go watch all of the battles. These things are going to be great.
Fair enough. So yeah, I will just go out there and say, um, probably sometime in the next little bit, um, expect that second video this week. I'm real excited to get that out. It will probably be a like one-off thing and not like a oh Hannah's gonna do a second video every week. But yeah, that that second video is going to be real fun. And also obviously the plug that we always put at the end of all of this video or all of these videos. If you are watching this and you have not joined Loss yet, do so, please. It is a wonderful, wonderful place, and we would love to have you. Um,
If you're watching this and you're not in Lost, what? Why are you here? Come on, join us.
join us, be one of us. We love you. You don't know us yet, but we love you. So, all right. I think that just about wraps us up. So, thank you everybody who has stuck with us through this. See y'all next week.